Welcome back to the Nuggets of Gold podcast and YouTube channel. Today we're gonna be talking about Raheem Mostert. Me and Aiden didn't totally recap the game, but we're gonna talk a little bit about the run game in this episode. Later this week, we're gonna have an episode just about some of the strengths on this team, like the biggest strengths and their building blocks kind of. And so we'll get back into the week one game a lot. But for Raheem Mostert, very, very sad to see that he's going to be out for the year. Initially, it was reported that it was going to be an 8-week injury, and then Mostert opted for surgery, and he's going to be out for the rest of the season. So really unfortunate news for him. Doesn't seem like, it sucks. It seemed like we've seen how many times he's gone down, but this is not a guy that is just like, oh, Mostert's gone, whatever. Yes, they have other guys that are going to fill that place, but Aiden, you were talking about it before we got on. Mostert's speed in this offense is really, really special, and they're going to lose the dynamic of the offense. Now, Eli Mitchell, fantastic player. Trey Sermon, for some reason, everyone's selling. Well, I get why everyone's selling their stock. It's because he's a healthy scratch. He's a rookie running back, fumbling issues, playbook issues, potential curfew issues, and that's why he was a healthy scratch. It's not about the talent. We saw in preseason, he's still a very strong runner. Him and Eli Mitchell as a 1-2 punch is going to be very special, but it does really suck to have Raheem Mostert out for the season. So, Aiden, what do you think that they lose when they lose Mostert for the rest of this year?
Yeah, I think that you touched on it. They lose the speed, they lose the home run ability. Obviously, a guy like Eli Mitchell is super duper fast, and it's not like Sermon is slow or anything like that. But you lose the effortless running by people, the 75-yard pitch touchdowns. I think we're going to see a few less of those. You could probably pencil in with Mostert in there, probably 2 or 3 over the course of the season. He's just going to run past people. Those wide sweeps, pitches, stuff like that, they're definitely going to lose. But I don't think this cripples the 49ers offense the way that I guess some people do. I think he's a valuable player. But it could end up being a positive. Maybe you re-sign Mostert next year now. I was of the opinion that this season he was going to play himself into a bigger contract elsewhere, but maybe that doesn't happen and he takes a 1-year prove-it deal, and we get to see year 2 of Elijah Mitchell, Sermon with 1 year of Mostert. And a guy that we can't forget about, Jeff Wilson. He's going to be back this season. They just signed Kerryon Johnson. Still got bodies in this running back room. JaMychal Hasty, who we both like. I think that the Niners running game is not dead. Just missing a bit of a component, but I think you can do some new stuff with a guy like Eli Mitchell as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I like your idea of having Sermon and Mitchell in their second year, and then having Mostert in there as another back. I never felt that Mostert was going to be that guy who's going to be like a lead back. I've always loved him as a guy that you give 8 touches to, because you know that one of those 8 touches can very easily be an 80-yard touchdown. And we've seen that. I think you're right about it's not going to be like it crippled the 49ers. It's not like one of those losses, because I think a lot of people look at Mostert and they're like, oh, well, they just lost, their best back. I don't really look at their backfield like that. I think that the guys bring different dynamics. For instance, you brought up Jeff Wilson. That's going to be huge when he comes back. He's a very good inside runner. He's a very powerful player. And when you look at what makes Eli Mitchell good, same kind of thing makes Jeff Wilson good as well, where he lowers his shoulder, he runs guys over. So both those two guys are going to have that kind of power dynamic. Also, Eli Mitchell is fast as hell. He runs like a 4.3. Trey Sermon has an amazing 10-yard burst. We're going to see him. I think the best thing about him is that he's a very good in-between the tacklers runner. He is an incredibly balanced player, and he's also pretty good in the passing game as well. So we're going to see him kind of used more in that, between the tackle and then kind of scat back roll a little bit. We're going to see I think we're going to see Mitchell a little bit more outside. And I think we're going to see Jeff Wilson more in the red zone probably than those other guys. But we're also just going to see him in between the tackles as well. So they're going to have 3 backs that they're going to be able to go to quite a bit. Didn't mention JaMychal Hasty yet. I don't see him carving out a massive role. I think the biggest role he's going to have is being potentially the number 2 back right now. I do expect Sermon and Mitchell to be the main guys starting next week. And I still think that Hasty will be in that third role because for his like, yes, there's these problems with Trey Sermon. JaMychal Hasty is not good in terms of pass blocking. Like we saw him back there, he got destroyed a couple times. So he kind of missed a couple assignments. He had some he makes guys miss, which is good, and you're going to toss him in there, but he's more suited for that depth back role, I believe. So I do think that for the rest of the year, you're going to see a healthy Sermon, Mitchell, like backfield, and then after Jeff Wilson comes back, you're going to see probably all three of those guys used a good amount. Jeff Wilson, he is a little bit similar to Trey Sermon, and I think then comparing him to Eli Mitchell, so you'll probably see. I don't know who do you think is the number one back now when Jeff Wilson returns?
Depending on, I mean, I think it's going to be a truly hot hand approach. I think that each guy will get 3 carries in the first quarter, and whoever did the best with those 3 carries may get the carries for the rest of the game. We saw Eli Mitchell get that hot hand last week, but I think it could have easily been JaMychal Hasty. I'm not super high on any, like, if you're listening to this for like fantasy advice, I'm not super high on like Elijah Mitchell as RB1 for the rest of the year, because I think Shanahan does not care about anybody's fantasy team, and will run whoever is running the best, who gives the defense a specific look, really even specific plays. We saw that famous Jeff Wilson angle route to beat the Cardinals. That was a play specifically for him. I think Shanahan is going to do that with the running backs, given that they bring something different each way. And people are freaking out and looking at the Niners scoring 40 points in week 1, and Elijah Mitchell had 100 yards rushing and a touchdown. I don't think, and I hope I'm wrong, that he's going to be like a 1,000-yard guy. I expect him to have 700 yards, Sermon to have 700, and maybe Jeff Wilson comes back midway through the season and has 400. Hasty has around 400. I think they'll hit 2,000 maybe as a team, and especially when Lance starts to work himself in a lot more often, that's going to take carries away. But if I had to choose an RB1 for this next week, it's probably Elijah Mitchell. I think he'll get the first carry given how he ran last week, but I expect Sermon to be active. I expect him to get carries. I expect Hasty to get carries. A guy like Kerryon Johnson, who we just signed, could definitely get some carries. I just don't expect anybody to be RB1 for the Niners for more than, I guess, 5-6 games this year.
It wasn't very long ago that Kerryon Johnson was a starting running back either. I mean, that was 2019.
And
so
a good one.
He was pretty good. He was pretty solid. And then it just kind of all fell apart. I feel like most of that was injury related though, because he was consistently banged up in Detroit. But I forgot that he even signed today, and I did see that, but I didn't even think about that because he's on the practice squad right now. We'll see if he comes in. Now you can kind of look at like what the Ravens did, where they're like bringing a bunch of guys in. Like a lot of times, 1 or 2 of those guys will end up getting moved. So say they bring in Kerryon and Kerryon looks amazing, and for some reason they don't think Hasty's is good, like they might just move on from Hasty. Like I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it could happen where like guys get bounced around all the time. The thing that we do know, the key to this running game is not necessarily the running backs. It is George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk, Trent Williams, and Mike McGlinchey, who all looked absolutely amazing on Sunday. You want to look at why the 49ers almost blew out the Lions? That's probably going to be most of your reason right there. Those guys were dominating the line of scrimmage. They were stealing the edge. George Kittle, I know that I think he had like 70 yards on a few catches, didn't do anything crazy in the receiving game. George Kittle was so good. So good. There were multiple times where they showed Eli Mitchell coming around the edge, and George Kittle has the defensive end, the linebacker, whoever it is, completely sideways. And Mitchell just goes right off his butt and just has like 5 yards of open field, and then turns that into even more yards. So those are the guys that you want to look at for the run game, because they're going to be able to find guys that can come in and do it. I do absolutely love Elijah Mitchell, though. I think he's a stud. I think he's going to be really good for this system. I think he's like the perfect fit. I'm also incredibly intrigued by Trey Sermon just because he looks a lot different than some of the backs that Kyle's brought in a good way, not like in a negative way. So I do think he's going to be good as well. And I agree. Like, we need to calm down with like Troy Sermon's a bust. It's 1 week into the year. A rookie with a fumbling problem getting benched at running back is not, like red flag central. Red flag central is what the Raiders just did when they had Cleveland Farrell as a healthy scratch, who was the 4th overall pick before another edge rusher that is like a perennial 10 sack a year guy. So that's the bigger issue when you're looking at these. So I don't think it's time to freak out about Trey Sermon, but I am very excited about this whole running back room. You brought up also Trey Lance is going to get some carries. I liked your projections. I think they're pretty solid just because we've seen like how it looks at the end of the year, and that's usually what it looks like. Also got to bring in Debo, Ayuk. Those are 2 guys that can compete for carries, or maybe Ayuk. I don't know. We're going to talk about that tomorrow, but we'll see with Ayuk. But yeah, I think that's all I have on this running back room. It's still a really good room. I do think for fantasy, I think you can hope that Elijah Mitchell is a running back too. I hope that he's a running back too. I play a lot of dynasty fantasy football, and I pretty much stashed him in every single league. So right now it is a great time for me in fantasy running back wise. So I'm really happy about Elijah Mitchell looking as good as he did. Still really sad that Raheem Mostert is going to be out for the year. Really unfortunate news. Never wish that upon a player. I really hope he can come back and continue to play good football. I know a lot of people have speculated that he's done in San Francisco. We will see. I like Aiden's idea of having those 3 guys in the backfield next year, but time will only tell. So anything else you want to add, Aiden, before we take off out of here?
No, I think you hit it right on the head.
All right, sweet, man. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. And tomorrow we are going to talk about the mysterious Brandon Ayuk situation. I don't even know what to call it, but that's terrifying for me because if you guys have listened to the show for a while, you know that Brandon Ayuk has been my dude for quite some time. So going to talk about that tomorrow, but this is what we got on Raheem Mostert and now this running back room. So thank you all for listening.